Hey guys, this is God of Politics, and welcome back to a brand new video. But before we get started with this video, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, join the Discord that is linked in the description, and check out the website, which is also linked down in the description. But in today's video, I do want to do a video that I have been doing for a couple months now, and that is the 2020 election according to the polling data. Now, I am going to be using FiveThirtyEight because it's just a little bit cleaner, a little bit easier to go in between the states, and so you'll have a smoother transition between going through all 50 states, which do have a poll now. Back in the last video I did this, the last time I did this, we didn't have polls in, I believe, states like Oregon, South Dakota, Illinois. So now we do have polls in those states. I'm going to be going through all 50 of these states, seeing what the polls do show about those states. I'm not going to be, giving it to an either candidate based on what I think. It's based on exactly what the polls say. So if you see a video that is blue in one place and red in another that you don't like, that's not based on what I think. It's based on what the poll thinks. This is in some ways to point out how sometimes the polls aren't that great, and in other ways is to show the state of the race in many states and which way it is trending in. So we'll just start from the top here. At the national level, Joe Biden, according to 538, is ahead 8.2 percentage points here, which is a pretty strong lead. It's up from, I believe he was up around 6 percentage points a couple weeks ago. It's his peak since around, the beginning of August here, or actually probably around the end of August, but he has been doing very well lately and not much tightening at all. So starting off with Alabama, Trump's up 17.3. That is obviously going to be a safe Republican state. The next state is the state of Alaska, which actually only has Trump up 5.7 percentage points in the polls, which is a bigger lead for Joe Biden in states like Michigan than it is in states like Alaska for Trump, which is quite interesting, but that would be a likely margin of victory for Donald Trump there. The next state is the state of Arizona, which right now does have Joe Biden by 4.1 percentage points. We had a new poll today from Siena College New York Times showing Biden up by 8 percentage points, which is quite a lot, but 4.1 percentage points would make the state of Arizona go by a lean margin. The next state is the state of Arkansas, which actually only shows Trump up by 16 percentage points. Before it was like 3 percentage points, but it's kind of fixed itself. We know that 3 points is not a realistic scenario for how the state of Arkansas is going to go. California, obviously going to be a safe margin, 61-31, which is very similar to how it went in 2016. That's obviously going to be safe Democrat. Colorado, another state that's been trending blue for a while, is at 11.8 percentage points, which would put that at safe Democrat there. Colorado's actually had a history of underestimating Democrats in terms of the polling day. They did that in 2016. Connecticut, another state that is clearly going to be safe Democratic. You could argue maybe in the future it'll be more Republican, but we'll see about that. Delaware, obviously you've got Joe Biden. It's his home state. That's probably going to go by a much greater margin than what it went by in 2016, but it will be safe blue regardless. DC, obviously Biden plus 65 percentage points, something like that. That's obviously, again, going to be by a safe margin victory, the most blue area in the country. Florida, Biden is actually up by 3 percentage points now. He peaked it up around, he was up by around, 6.8 percentage points. He's got very close. Biden was up by only around 1.5 percentage points, but now he is up by around 3 percentage points again. We did have many polls, some showing very good results for Biden, like Biden plus 5 in New York Times, some showing very good results for Trump, like the result of Trump plus 4 with in the state of Florida. So that is lean Democrat in the state of Florida, which I don't think is realistic, but that is what the polls say. Georgia, here's a very interesting one. We've had a lot of polls recently that have shown Biden up in Georgia, and now according to the Georgia poll average, Biden is now ahead in the state of Georgia. It looks very weird seeing it tilt blue, but that is what the polls show. Hawaii, another state, obviously going to be safe Democratic. We all expect that. Idaho, another state that's obviously and clearly going to be safe Republican. I think we can all agree on most of these. Illinois, we actually had a poll which showed Biden up by 7, or actually it showed him up. We had a poll here showing him up by 13, and then we had some SurveyMonkey polls, but I wouldn't really trust SurveyMonkey very much. But regardless, Illinois is going to be a safe Democratic state. The next state is the state of Indiana, which shows it a little bit closer than 2016, but still a safe margin of victory for the president of the United States, Donald Trump. Iowa, another very close one. Biden came very close at one point. He was ahead by 0.4 percentage points, but now we do have Trump ahead by 1.4 percentage points because we did have these SurveyMonkey polls, which nobody should really trust at all. I mean, I don't know why they're listed at the top here if they haven't even been done in September, but they are there. But we do have Hard Research Associates, which showed Trump up 2. Data for Prior showed him up by 3. Rabbit Research showed Biden up by 2. Monmouth showed Trump up by 3. But it is going to be very close, at least according to the poll. So that is a tilt margin of victory for Donald Trump in the state of Iowa. Next is the state of Kansas, which is actually only going to by a likely margin according to the polls, probably because Bollier is doing very well, and there's usually less ticket splitting in the polls than there actually is in real life, or maybe just Bollier is going to do worse as well, which is also a very real possibility. But according to the polls, Kansas is going by a likely margin. In the future, you could say it's trending blue, but Trump went up by 25 percentage points. It's not going to trend that blue. Kentucky is another state that's going to be closer according to the polls, but still a reliably safe Republican state. Louisiana is the next state, which only shows it by 14.6 percentage points. We actually had a Trafalgar poll that showed Trump only up by 16 percentage points. But it's Louisiana. It's a safe Republican state regardless. Next one, the state of Maine, which is quite an interesting state. We do have Maine at large, which shows Biden up by 15, which would be a safe margin. If we do look in terms of Maine's first and second congressional district, so you look at the first district, Biden's up by 24 percentage points here. So that's obviously going to be safe, pretty realistic. If we look at the second congressional district, Biden's actually up by 3.6 percentage points, which is a lean margin of victory. We did have a lot of polls from here. We had Colby College showing Biden up by 3, Suffolk, Biden up by 1, New York Times, Biden up by 2, Quinnipiac, Biden up 9. So he's been consistently ahead in a lot of polls. I still do have this as still Republican, but according to the polls, it is lean Democrat. Maryland, that is obviously going to be safe Democrat, one of the most Democratic states in the country. Massachusetts, same thing, one of the most Democratic states in the country, plus 35 is what we would expect. Michigan, Biden's up by 7 percentage points, which, as I noted before, is more than what Trump's up by in Alaska, which is very crazy to note, but that is what the polls do show. But that is a likely margin of victory there for Joe Biden, according to the polls. We even had polls like Trafalgar Group, which showed Biden up by 2, which is quite interesting there. Minnesota, another state showing Biden up very easily, almost by a safe margin, but he is up by a likely margin according to the polls there. A state that probably will trend blue this election. I don't see much of a path for Trump winning it. He doesn't really have much of a path considering the fact that he's not favored in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania either. But that is going by 9.2 percentage points according to the polls. Mississippi, according to the polls, is going to Trump by 12.8 percentage points, a little bit closer than 2016 by around 4 to 5 percentage points, but it is still a safe state. Missouri going by only 6.4 percentage points, which isn't very realistic, but that is what the polls do show. It was close in 2008, but hasn't been very close since then. I don't expect it to be close either. Montana, Trump only up 8.2 percentage points. Again, I think this is similar to the fact that Steve Bullock's doing very well in the polls, hence why Joe Biden would be doing a lot better. But Montana is still a very weird state, It was only lost by Obama by around 3 percentage points, and then Trump goes and wins it by 25 percentage points. That is a huge trend. Do I think that it'll happen that much? Do I think there'll be that much of a trend? No, but that is what the polls do show. According to Nebraska at large, if we do have we do look at Nebraska at large. I don't know if we have actually any polls from Nebraska at large. We do, and they do show a safe margin of victory. We actually don't have any polls from Nebraska's 3rd congressional district, so that's the one area without a poll. But it is going to be safe Republican regardless. We have a poll from the 1st district, I believe. Yeah, we have one poll from the 1st district, which shows Trump up by 2 percentage points, which actually would only be a lean margin of victory, which is quite funny considering that that's most likely not going to happen. I can almost say certainly that's not going to happen. But as for the 2nd district, according to the polls, it pretty much does show Joe Biden's up by a likely margin in Nebraska's 2nd district. Again, it is very suburban and has been trending blue. Whether it trends that much, I don't think so, but that is what the polls show. Nevada is another state which has overestimated Republicans historically and consistently in the state, and they do show Biden up by 6.2 percentage points. I don't think they'll underestimate Joe Biden as much, because usually the reason they underestimate Democrats is because they underestimate Latino turnout and support, which I don't think is as strong for Biden this time, but we will see that it is like a margin according to the polls. New Hampshire, almost a safe margin, but it is a likely margin according to the polls, so that's another, good win for Joe Biden according to the polls. New Jersey, another safe state, going by 5 percentage points more than in 2016. And New Mexico, another state that is being moved into the safe column because of some recent polls that we have. We had Biden plus 15 according to research and polling, PVP Adam plus 14. So that is a safe margin of victory there. New York, one of the safest states in the country as well, plus 27. The state's not going to go red for a very long time, despite what some people have been commenting on my videos. North Carolina, Biden's up 1.8 percentage points. We did have some recent polls here showing that it's not close, but I do believe it will be very close. Whether Biden can win it by 1.8 percentage points, I doubt, but that is what the polls do show. In North Dakota, we did have a poll here recently showing Trump up by 14 percentage points, but Trump in the polls is up 22 percentage points, which is completely expected, going to be by a safe margin. Ohio actually shows Biden up by 0.2 percentage points because we did have, for example, we had Trafalgar showing him up by 4, YouGov showing it as a tie, ALG Research showing Biden up by 2, Fox News showing Biden up by 5. So the average does have Biden up by 0.2 percentage points, which actually makes that a tilt Democrat state. I don't think that's realistic either, but that is what the polls do show. Oklahoma, another safe Republican state. Oregon, we had a recent poll here showing that Biden was up by 17 percentage points here. So that is that. Another safe Democratic state, which is what you would expect from the state of Oregon, but we had no polls. Pennsylvania, we've had a swath of new good polls for Joe Biden here, which show Biden up by 6.1 percentage point on the average, which is another likely margin of victory. So you can see here, basically, according to the polls, Joe Biden is sweeping the Midwest, which is pretty much what you'd expect based on the polls. Rhode Island, another one of those states that's going to go by a safe margin, even though we've had virtually no polls. We had those survey monkey polls, which I wouldn't trust, but regardless, Rhode Island's a safe Democratic state. South Carolina, we did have some polls, which actually only showed Trump up by 5.6 percentage points. It's been polled quite a lot recently because of the fact that there's the Senate race, which is theoretically competitive. I don't think it's competitive, but that's what a lot of people have been saying. But we did have some polls showing a little bit closer. I don't think it'll actually be this close. I do have it as a likely margin, probably by around 9 to 10 percentage points, but that is what the polls do show. South Dakota, another one of those safe Republican states by a very easy margin. Tennessee, another safe Republican state, and we're in the home stretch of polls and states here. Texas shows Trump up by 2.2 percentage points. We've had a lot of close polls recently, but Trump is still favored to win this state. I do expect him to win it by around 3 to 4 percentage points, and that is pretty much unmatched with what the margin at least says, close to it in terms of the Texas polls. Utah, another state which only shows Trump up by 13.5. I don't think this is very realistic. I think he'll win it by a lot more than this, but that is what the polls do show. We can already see here Biden's way past the 270 mark. He's already at 331. Vermont, completely expected. Joe Biden at 30 percentage points with a lead. Virginia, a state that's been trending blue for a while, and we found actually some recent polls here. They do show Biden up by a safe margin, which is actually what I have it at my prediction. Washington, we had some polls here recently that again is a safe margin. West Virginia, easily could be the most Republican state in the country this year. Trended very red, very fast. That's a safe Republican state. Wisconsin shows Biden up by 6.7 percentage points. If you have a reminder of 2016, that's pretty much the same thing as what it showed in 2016, and we know how that turned out. But that is what the polls do show again here. And then the final state, obviously, is the state of Wyoming, which does show Trump up by a safe margin of victory. So looking at the overall map here, we see Joe Biden and Kamala Harris at 369 electoral votes to Donald Trump and Mike Pence is 169. Now, you can easily make critiques of this poll. Why is Kansas likely? Why is Missouri likely? Why is Montana likely? Why is Ohio till D? Why is Georgia till D? So the overall gist of this is that the polls will overestimate Democrats, because I'm pretty confident this is not what the map will look like on election night. I'll make my prediction. If it does look like this, that would be very surprising, but that is what the polls do show, and I do expect them to overestimate Democrats. Whether they overestimate them by 6-7 points in the Rust Belt to be able to get Trump a victory is a completely different question, but this is what the polls do show now. A pretty sweeping victory for Joe Biden, a landslide victory, I would call it, for Joe Biden, and that would be pretty significant, but that is what the polls do show. I have my own criticisms of the polls. You probably do too, and you shouldn't always trust them. Trust the good ones, ignore the bad ones. So thank you all for watching this video. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, join the Discord that is linked down in the description, and check out the website, which is also linked down in the description. So again, guys, thank you all for watching this video, and I will see you guys later.